College football loves to celebrate its legends. You know the names: Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, USC. Schools that treat winning like it's a birthright. They've stacked trophies, rolled out Heisman winners, and flooded NFL rosters. But for every powerhouse, there's the other side of the coin. Programs so historically bad, so tragically cursed, they've practically made losing an art form. Today, we're not talking about who's on top. We're digging through the wreckage at the bottom, the disasters of college football. This is my argument for the worst of the worst. First, eliminations. Alright, so how do we even start figuring out the most embarrassing college football programs? We're talking 128 teams in the FBS as of 2024. And that's a lot of bad football to sift through. So let's get ruthless. National championships. If your school has ever won multiple national titles, congrats, you're safe. Even if it's been a while, those banners don't come down. We're counting the split titles too, because hey, a trophy's a trophy. So right away, say goodbye to the Alabamas and the Notre Dames. Ohio State's out. Clemson, Georgia, USC, Florida, Michigan, LSU, you're all off the hook. In total, 31 teams in FBS have at least one national title. Of those, 17 schools have claimed 2 or more, so they're officially eliminated from disaster contention. Winning percentage. If your program has won more games than it's lost, you don't belong in this conversation. There are too many programs that can't seem to get above 500, so we'll focus on them. This leaves us with the real suspects, the teams who lose more than they win, the ones who haven't sniffed a national title, and the schools where fans, if they have any left, will be sure to weigh in on their misery. Next set of cuts. So after knocking out the blue bloods and the winning programs, we're left with 45 schools still in the running for this unwanted crown. Now, to be fair, some of these schools haven't even been around long enough at the top level to really qualify by my count. I'm not going to bully the new guys. If your program joined the FBS after 1995, you're off the hook. That means UAB, joined in 1996, Middle Tennessee, 1999, and the Florida Twins, FAU and FIU, who both came in 2004. Also out, Texas State and South Alabama in 2012, and Georgia State in 2013. Then there's the part-timers. Programs that have bounced between divisions or haven't stuck around long enough to rack up a full resume of failure. UConn and UMass, both of them fall into that category. Neither has hit 30 full seasons at the FBS level, though if this was a who are you betting against to save your house contest, they would have been near the top of my list. Trimming it down. Alright, we're sitting at 36 schools, but let's be real, that's still way too many for this kind of breakdown. We need to clean this list up before diving into the true bottom feeders. So here's the next move. We're removing 11 of the smaller conference teams that, while still technically under 500, have actually been kinda decent by comparison. These schools aren't setting the world on fire, but they've at least stayed competitive in the MAC, the Mountain West, or Conference USA. So say goodbye, for now, to North Texas, Arkansas State, San Jose State, Ohio, Louisiana, Colorado State, Wyoming, Ball State, Marshall, Northern Illinois, and Utah State. Are they crushing it? Not really. But compared to what's left on this list, they're practically dynasties. That gets us down to 25 teams. And now we're officially dealing with the worst of the worst. Breaking down the final 25. So now we've reached the Elite 25, though I'm not sure we should really call them that under these circumstances. These are the last teams standing in our hunt for college football's most embarrassing programs. Let's break it down by conference, starting with the power conferences, or what's left of them in 2024. The SEC still has 2 candidates in the mix, Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Kentucky's been respectable in basketball, but in football, it's been a long ride of mediocrity and heartbreak. And Vandy, well, they basically have season tickets to the bottom of the SEC standings. In the Big Ten, 3 schools made the cut: Rutgers, Northwestern, and Indiana. Rutgers and Indiana have pretty much built careers out of finishing near the basement, while Northwestern is here mostly because of the sheer number of really bad seasons sprinkled between the occasional fluky division title. Moving to the ACC, we've got Virginia, Duke, Wake Forest, and now SMU, who just joined the league in 2024. And yeah, SMU had a huge year in 2024. They made the ACC title game and lost to Clemson at the buzzer, then snuck into the 12-team playoff as an at-large. But let's be honest, their all-time stats are still built mostly on group of 5 schedules. This is their first real shot at power conference life in the modern era. Then there's the Pac-12 refugees, Washington State and Oregon State. The conference may have imploded, but these two have spent the modern era banging heads with the big boys, usually while finishing at the bottom of the standings. And over in the Big 12, it's a clean sweep of sadness from the state of Kansas, Kansas State, and Iowa State. Yes, K-State has had a few good years, but historically, this trio has been through a lot of football pain. That gives us 13 or 14 power conference teams, depending on how you count SMU. Now for the Group of 5 side of the bracket. These are the smaller conference teams still in the mix. In the AAC, we've got Tulane, Temple, and Rice. Tulane had a Sugar Bowl win recently, but their all-time record is still underwater. Temple, mostly pain. And Rice, well, they're better known for academics, and frankly, they're fine with that. In the Mountain West, it's New Mexico and UNLV. New Mexico has basically been allergic to winning for decades, and UNLV, let's just say they're way better at hosting college basketball tournaments in March than playing football in the fall. From Conference USA, it's UTEP and New Mexico State, two schools that have spent most of their football existence just trying to survive, and sometimes failing at that too. And over in the MAC, we've got the classic trio of struggle, Akron, Kent State, and Eastern Michigan. Between the three of them, they've basically mastered the art of losing midweek games on ESPN2. Finally, in the Sun Belt, there's Louisiana Monroe, a program that's made losing seasons feel like tradition. So that's the breakdown. Power teams that can't stop losing, and Group of 5 programs that might never get out of the hole. Next up, we'll start narrowing down the worst of the worst. Power Conference Breakdown. When it comes to long-term failure, conference championships tell us a lot. If your program has managed to win a league title, even once, that means you've had at least a flash of relevance. You've shown you can compete, even if it was a fluke, or decades ago. So for this round, I'm cutting loose the schools that have pulled that off more than twice. It's a simple rule. If you've managed to win your conference 3 times or more, you've had enough success to dodge the bottom tier label. That knocks out a big chunk of the field. Next, let's look at winning percentage. And just to be clear, every team left has a losing record. This is a race to the bottom, but some of these schools at least keep things somewhat respectable. They lose, sure, but not with the same historical consistency as the real disasters. The schools still standing at the bottom, Vanderbilt, Indiana, and Wake Forest. These three have turned losing into a tradition. No conference titles in Vandy's case, decades of misery in Indiana's case, and Wake Forest? Well, they've done just enough to break their fans' hearts while never quite climbing out of the basement. So they're moving on to the next round. Group of 5 breakdown. Now let's shift the focus to the Group of 5 programs, the smaller conference teams still in the running for college football's bottom spot. First up, conference championships. Even at the Group of 5 level, winning a title means you've at least managed to figure things out once in a while. So anyone who's done that with any consistency gets a break here. That's why we're removing SMU, Tulane, Rice, New Mexico, and New Mexico State. None of these schools are exactly dynasties, but they've at least hung a few banners along the way. That's more than you can say for some of the others. Next, let's talk win percentage. And just like the Power Conference group, all of these schools have losing records. But there's losing, and then there's losing badly. So we'll give Temple a pass here. Winning 43% of your games isn't something to brag about, but compared to what's coming, it's almost decent. We're also cutting UNLV, UTEP, and Akron. They've been bad, but the next group, they've practically made losing their brand. That leaves us with Kent State, Eastern Michigan, and Louisiana Monroe. These three have been so consistently bad for so long, it's almost impressive. This is the bottom of the Group of 5 barrel, and they're officially moving on to the next round. Disclaimer. Now before we go any further, let's be clear. I get it. There are a lot of programs with rough histories. And yeah, it's not exactly fair to compare a Power 4 team with a Group of 5 school. The budgets, the recruiting pools, the expectations, they're totally different worlds. Accordingly, I will dive into each world separately, providing a winner for each. This is also just my take. It's part history, part numbers, and let's be honest, mostly opinion. So if you've got a team you think should be higher or lower, drop it in the comments. I'm always down to hear your arguments. That's half the fun of this stuff anyway. Vanderbilt. When people talk about Vanderbilt football, they usually start with academics, not athletics. And that's not by accident. In terms of pure football history, Vandy is in a class of its own when it comes to losing. Between 1960 and 2007, they had exactly 4 winning seasons. That's almost half a century where 6-6 felt like a miracle. From the early 60s all the way into the mid-2000s, Vanderbilt basically existed to fill out other SEC teams' homecoming schedules. There was a brief moment of sunshine under James Franklin in 2012 and 2013. The Commodores won 9 games each year, grabbed back-to-back bowl wins, and even cracked the top 25. It was so out of character you'd think you were watching a different team. But once Franklin left for Penn State, Vandy slid right back into its usual spot at the bottom. NFL-wise, they've had some names. Jay Cutler is probably the most famous, and Jordan Matthews had a decent NFL run. But success stories are few and far between. No major NCAA sanctions, no scandals, just decades of being consistently outmanned and outgunned in the SEC. In fact, Vanderbilt hasn't won a conference title since 1923, back when helmets were made of leather and the forward pass was still considered suspicious. If you're making a Mount Rushmore of college football futility, Vanderbilt's probably the first face you carve. Indiana. If you're an Indiana football fan, you've built up enough scar tissue to last a lifetime. This is a basketball school through and through. And the football program, well, let's just say it's never really caught up. The Hoosiers have the worst winning percentage in Big Ten history. They've only been to 13 bowl games ever, and they've won exactly 3 of them. That's 3-10 in bowl games, and a lot of those appearances felt like minor miracles just for getting there. Between 1995 and 2018, Indiana had exactly 1 winning season. That's more than 2 full decades of hoping, praying, and usually watching the wheels fall off by October. They did have a brief spark under Tom Allen in 2019 and 2020. Those were solid years, an 8-5 season, then a 6-2 campaign where they cracked the top 10. But even then, they lost their bowl games both years. Then last year in 2024, they had a good run with new coach Curt Cignetti finishing 11-2 and joining the expanded playoff field, before losing to Notre Dame in their first big-time postseason matchup. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, Bill Mallory gave them a little life with 6 bowls in 8 seasons. And yeah, Lee Corso coached there in the 70s, but let's be honest, he's better known for putting on mascot heads than for calling plays. Indiana has had a few NFL guys like Antoine Randall El and Tevin Coleman. But for the most part, this program has lived at the bottom of the Big Ten for generations. No scandals, no NCAA violations, just a whole lot of losing. Wake Forest. When you think of Wake Forest, you think of basketball legends like Tim Duncan or Chris Paul. But football? For most of their history, it's been an afterthought. From the 1970s through the mid-90s, Wake was basically the ACC's automatic W. Season after season, they rolled out 2-9 or 3-8 records, often getting blown out by halftime. Things changed briefly in 2006 when Jim Grobe led them to a Cinderella ACC title. They followed that up with bowls in 2007 and 2008, and more recently, Dave Clawson has done a solid job keeping them competitive. From 2016 to 2022, Wake made 7 straight bowl appearances, and they even went 11-3 in 2021. But don't let recent success erase the bigger picture. Wake Forest has spent most of its football life at the bottom of the standings. Even during their good years, they're usually the smallest school in the power conferences, usually fighting uphill against schools with bigger budgets, bigger fan bases, and much deeper recruiting pipelines. They've produced some solid NFL talent, Jesse Bates III, Chris Givens, and Ricky Prohl among them. And Jim Caldwell coached here before eventually winning a Super Bowl with the Colts. Wake isn't a disaster because of scandal or mismanagement. They're a disaster because the deck has been stacked against them for a century. And for most of that time, they've played the role of lovable underdog, who usually loses. Kent State. If you're looking for the statistical worst team in FBS history, Kent State is your team. They have the lowest all-time winning percentage in major college football. Part of that comes with the territory. Group of 5 schools like Kent State usually get paid to take beatings from the Power 4. They'll show up as a warm-up game on an SEC or Big Ten schedule, collect a big check, and go home 0-1. Meanwhile, the top programs load up on cupcakes. But for teams like Kent State, they're usually the cupcake. Still, the numbers are brutal. Since joining the MAC in 1951, Kent State has had just 3 winning seasons since 1997. It gets even worse for the Golden Flashes. They have had 8 seasons with only 1 win, and an additional 5 seasons where they finished winless, including in 2024. That's almost half a century of taking L's. Their only conference title came back in 1972, and even then they lost the Tangerine Bowl to Tampa. Yes, really. They did have a miracle season in 2012, going 11-3 and coming within 1 win of a BCS Bowl. They lost a double overtime heartbreaker in the MAC title game, then dropped the GoDaddy.com Bowl to Arkansas State. But for Kent State, that year was basically their Super Bowl run. NFL-wise, they've had some surprises. Joshua Cribbs made a career as a return specialist, and Julian Edelman, a college quarterback, went on to become a Super Bowl MVP wide receiver for the Patriots. But beyond those rare bright spots, Kent State has been the benchmark for losing in college football. Decades of getting smoked on Saturdays. Eastern Michigan. For most of their football life, Eastern Michigan has been the definition of a forgotten program. From 1990 to 2015, they had one winning season. They did win the MAC title in 1987, beating San Jose State in the California Bowl. But after that, nothing. Between 1990 and 2015, EMU was basically an automatic W for the rest of the MAC. Fans stopped showing up, preferring to stick to their local art scenes and outdoor activities of the area. The stadium was half empty, and for a while, there was serious talk of dropping the program altogether. Things have gotten better recently under Chris Crichton. Since 2016, they've made 6 bowl appearances, which is a massive turnaround compared to their history. But zoom out, and the bigger picture's still rough. NFL talent? They've had a few guys make it, like Jason Jones and Charlie Batch, who carved out a long career as an NFL backup QB. But there isn't much to brag about here. Just decades of budget problems, empty seats, and losses piling up. EMU football is like the Detroit Lions of college football, just with fewer fans and less attention. Louisiana Monroe. If there's a group of 5 team that practically defines bottom-tier college football, it's Louisiana Monroe. Since moving up to FBS in 1994, ULM has never won a conference title. That's 0 conference championships in 30 years. And over that same time period, they've had just 1 winning season. Their peak came in 2012 when they stunned number 8 Arkansas in overtime and finished 8-5. That team earned a trip to the Independence Bowl, the first and only bowl appearance in school history. They lost to Ohio, but for ULM fans, just making it was a win. NFL-wise, they've had a few names. Marty Booker had a nice career at wide receiver, but for the most part, Monroe is known more for coaching turnover than for sending guys to the pros. Terry Bowden, yes, that Terry Bowden, tried to turn things around in recent years, but that too only lasted 3 seasons with no success to show for it. With a limited time at the FBS level and pretty much nothing to show for it, Monroe is a program that's been stuck at the bottom since day one. Worst of the worst. Alright, after digging through decades of football, it's time to crown the champions of college football futility. And yeah, I'll admit it, I'm taking the easy way out and picking 2 winners. The power conferences and the group of 5 are just too different to lump into one pile. So we're handing out 2 trophies for misery. For the Power 5, it's Vanderbilt. This is a program with a 40-plus year stretch of pure futility, almost no conference success, and 0 real signs of turning it around. Yes, they play in the SEC, and yes, academics are part of the Vandy brand. But on the football field, it's been a generation-spanning disaster. For the group of 5, it's Kent State. Louisiana Monroe was in the mix, but Kent has been at this a lot longer. We're talking about a program that has racked up countless 0-1 win seasons, decades of irrelevance, and basically set the gold standard for losing. It's honestly hard to fathom how bad they've been. So what do you think? Drop your picks in the comments, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.